Well, welcome, Huskies. Welcome to another great Career Tuesday on March 30th. Today we have FDIC with us today. Again, another great employer for all of you business students and non-business students that might have an interest in a finance career. This is another great opportunity for you to learn about the industry as well as full-time jobs and internship opportunities with FDIC. And again, I just want to make sure that everyone knows FDIC stands for Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. You might have seen that logo when you walk into a bank. It's definitely something that I do recall as well, seeing that many times. And you always wonder what types of opportunities are behind that logo and that sign. So today we have two guests, William Hardy, as well as Matt Parenti, joining us today from FDIC here local to the state of Connecticut. And if you gentlemen, again, want to thank you for joining us today for this virtual event and taking the time out of your day to provide students with insight about career opportunities. And I guess I'd like to start the session with the first question, if you guys could give us a little brief overview as far as, what's your background? What did you guys major in going through college? And why FDIC? How did FDIC come into the picture as far as a career opportunity for both of you? I'm not sure if Bill or Matt, whichever one of you would like to start.
Sure, I'll go first. So thanks, Mick, Tricia, and everybody else for having us here, virtually here today. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about the FDIC's opportunities for college students that may be interested in full-time jobs or internships. So to answer Mick's question, I graduated in 2010. I was a business major. Specifically, I majored in finance in college. And then I had minors in accounting and international business. And I'm kind of unique in what drew me to the FDIC because both of my parents worked for the FDIC. So I may not honestly have known about it if it were not for my parents, but I knew, even though I was a finance major in college, and a lot of my friends were talking about, investment banking, the big Wall Street banks and things like that, I knew that I personally didn't want to work potentially 80 plus hours a week. And then I figured I would either burn out or not have time to just enjoy myself when I wasn't working. So I knew I wanted to find something that was not investment banking related. And to be honest, when firms were coming onto campus for me and recruiting, I really only remembered that. So I was glad that I learned about the FDIC because I was really looking for one of the biggest things I was looking for was a work-life balance right away. And that's one of the things that attracted me and drew me to the FDIC. And I had also had a few internships in various banks in the past. So I was a little familiar with how banks ran. And I figured, it wasn't necessarily the investment bank thing, but it gave me a perspective on kind of different types of banking operations, finance, and things like that. So that's kind of what drew me to FDIC.
Yeah, and in a similar vein, I came out of college with an undergraduate in finance, like Matt did. And similar to him, I knew I didn't want to go Wall Street. I had a pretty good accounting background, but it wasn't required for the FDIC. But I'll be candid, when I came out of college, there weren't many employers. We were back in 1991 when I came out with my undergrad. We were in the middle of what they call up here the New England banking crisis. So there weren't a lot of jobs, but the FDIC is actually counter-cyclical, where when things get bad, we hire a lot. And I was one of those mass hires. So that's when I started. And over the course of my career, the FDIC has helped sponsor my MBA. So I picked up an online MBA a few years back. And it's been, I tell people when I tell them about the FDIC, I'm as engaged today as I was 30 years ago when I started. And that's one of the things I love about the FDIC is that no 2 days are the same.
That's fantastic, Bill and Matt. Thank you so much for giving that, some great insight about a little bit about you and your background and how sort of you fell in the sense of finding that opportunity with FDIC as far as a career track and the opportunities and the great opportunities as far as being able to further pursue that career development and obtain that MBA. Kudos to you, Bill. In addition to that, I guess for us too is for many students is kind of understanding better too, who is FDIC as far as what does that organization do? How important are they within the finance community, especially in banking? And to tag along to that, as far as what types of roles do you see finance students or financial management students here at UConn sort of starting off their career with FDIC as far as internships or full-time roles, and what does that sort of look like on a day-to-day basis for them starting out day one?
So maybe Bill, I'll take the first part of Nick's question about kind of the history of the FDIC, and then you could talk about the opportunities that we may have available. So the FDIC was founded, I think, over 80 years ago now, kind of born out of the banking crisis, in the 1920s, I believe it was, if my memory is correct. Not that I was born in the 1920s, but it was kind of brought about because there were a lot of people that had trust issues in the banks. And if anybody has seen It's a Wonderful Life, that movie where there was kind of a run on the bank, that's what people were worried about then. So they created the FDIC. We are an independent agency of the federal government. So what that means is we are actually funded by insurance premiums that we levy on banks, where that's what the insurance part of the FDIC stands for. And we basically regulate and help to ensure the safety, stability, and soundness of the banking system, and make sure that customers or even potential customers of the banks are being treated as fairly and equally as possible. Want to make sure that banks are not taking undue risks, that they're not set up for failure. So that's kind of the overall history and the background of the FDIC. And I think it kind of plays in while we're looking for these risks to the banking system to what Bill could talk about for some of the opportunities that we have for college students.
Yeah, so our two primary divisions at the FDIC are the Risk Management Supervision and Consumer Protection divisions. And both of those, we bring people in on a 3 to 4 year training program. So business majors of any description, it wouldn't have to be finance or accounting. There is a requirement you have at least 2 accounting classes, and they're just the fundamentals, financial and managerial. Because again, it's the language of business. But beyond that, then we would train somebody in what it is to be a bank examiner. And we can take business majors of any description. We also then have the FDIC, besides the driver divisions, we also have financial analysts, we have a regional economists in all the regions, we have IT and cybersecurity analysts we bring on, as well as loan review specialists. So there's a host of different job types we bring into the FDIC, but the primary ones are the bank examiner positions, or we call it specifically the financial institution specialist.
That's fantastic, Bill. It's actually a great insight. And it's as far as additional majors, I mean, are you guys also looking into like management information systems majors, IT kind of majors for some of these types of roles as well? And also, are these jobs mobile? I mean, are students, or I should say students, but recent hires that are accepted into a full-time role, in post-pandemic, would they be traveling on site to these banks as well? And, are there opportunities throughout the country, whether it's Salt Lake City or Hartford, Connecticut?
You want to start, Matt?
Sure. So the first part, Mick, of your question about opportunities, like Bill had said, really any business major, and I believe management information systems typically falls under that. There's a lot going on, and not just in the FDIC, but the banking industry nowadays you'll see or read articles about fintech maybe, data scientists are kind of things that the FDIC is getting in on. Our chairman actually just recently announced an innovation lab initiative, basically to try and modernize some of the financial reporting in the banking industry, because it's kind of been the same for decades and decades. So that's kind of where some of that might come into play as well. But as long as you're applying for, like Bill said, the financial institution specialist, which is effectively a bank examiner trainee, any business major will suffice as long as you have the 2 accounting credits. And then to the point or question about kind of where you might work when things return to normal, if you're a new hire, we do have, I believe it's 80 plus offices nationwide. And depending on what job posting we have at the time and the need of each office, there could be any number of those offices that are effectively or essentially looking to hire at that time. I'll let Bill add anything here and touch on kind of what he thinks we might be doing when we return to normal in terms of being on site at banks versus working from an office or from our home, which we all are right now.
I feel like
Absolutely.
I'm being baited since none of us know what post-pandemic is going to look like. But I will add that headquarters for us is Washington, D.C. As a federal government agency. We have our headquarters are literally across the street from the White House. But we have 6 regional offices, the closest being New York City, where we have offices in the Empire State Building. So the staff not only have an opportunity in the 83 field offices, but then our 6 regional offices as well. There's a lot of office positions there. But what we've seen in the pandemic is most, if not all, of the positions at the FDIC can be done virtually, since all of us have been on mandatory telework since last March, right up through the chairman of the
Wow.
FDIC. So we've proven that we can do things remotely if we have to, but there's also an understanding that a lot of what we do is based on interaction and communication with the banks that we supervise. So it is still important that once the pandemic is over, we get back to having those conversations, having meetings, understanding the culture of the banks that we examine and supervise. So we will have a return to, a presence inside the banks for our examinations and for other work. How much of that we're not sure, but the nice thing that this has shown is that we have more flexibility going forward. So as we come out of this, there'll be a return to office plan that we implement here at the FDIC, like most other companies. And then we'll just see. The nice thing is I think we can strike a better balance with better work-life balance now that we even before that we had decent work-life balance to begin with. There should be less travel, but for people that like to travel, this is still a great place to work too.
Absolutely. That sounds fantastic that you guys, given the circumstances that we're in, you really have made, lemonade out of lemons here in the sense of being adaptable, pliable to the circumstances and still providing an excellent service for the customers in a virtual format and still, delivering for the customers in this kind of environment that we're in. So that's awesome that, FDIC really adjusted to that. I guess the other piece that I really wanted to talk about is sort of the interview, and not only the interview process, but really the application process. I think sometimes it could be intimidating for students to understand that, geez, what's really the difference between a government, resume and, my traditional reverse chronological resume and applying on, USA.gov's web page for a job with FDIC, and what does that actually mean? Like, does my resume have to be 1 page, or can it be more? And what should be actually on there? I'm not sure, Bill or Matt, whoever would like to take that question.
You're on mute, Matt. No, I can't hear you. So maybe I'll take this one.
All right, sounds good, Bill.
So yeah, you're absolutely right, Mick. At the FDIC, all of our hiring goes through the USA Jobs portal. So while we post positions up on Handshake through Yukon, there's still the actual posting itself is going to be inside USA Jobs. But it is a federal government position, so unlike private resumes, which are no more than 1 page, right? I'm sure you harp on your students, it's got to be 1 page, it has to be clear, it has to be well formatted. We would expect it still to be clear and well formatted and grammatically correct, but the nice thing about the government resume is that it's meant to support the application that you fill out. So for the job announcements we have on USA Jobs, you'll see that it's an online application. You're checking radio buttons as to, here's the experience I have, here's, my qualifications. And then the resume is meant to backstop that or support it and provide more details. So government resumes or federal government resumes tend to be pages long, not 1 page. Just as a way of reference, for the last job posting or promotion I put in for, my government resume is 7 pages long.
Wow.
But again, I've worked for the FDIC for 30 years, and I've taken a whole bunch of different opportunities and positions throughout the years. So I had a lot to offer. But typically college students coming through can explain more about the skills that they have and the classes that they've taken. So, if there's an application question that has to do with oral communication and, you've done presentations for different groups that you work with or in some kind of a nonprofit, or even just, as the captain of the team that you're with, and you've, done award ceremonies and things like that, you can put more in there about, the specific oral communication that you've had, either training wise or experience. So it gives the student the opportunity, or the applicant, the opportunity to expand that a little bit and better support the application questions that they put on there. So typically college students, have 2-3 page resumes is common on a government resume. There is a federal government resume writing guide that's available. And, you either can contact Matt or myself, or, you can always, Google search it as well. It's available, but happy to provide that and provide that for any applicants that would be interested.
Absolutely. No, thank you, Bill, on that insight. It's definitely a good eye opener to know that, hey, a traditional one-page resume isn't, the one that's always going to be best suited or fit for what's sort of expected through the application process on a federal job search site through USA.gov. So I guess the next question I'd like to ask more is related to the interview process. And again, interviewing could definitely be intimidating, especially for students, and sometimes not as enjoyable for everyone on both sides, I think. But through that process, what should students be sort of prepared for as far as the interview? What are some of the types of questions? Are they going to be more traditional, or are they more behavioral? Is there a different interview process for an intern than there is, say, a full-time hire that's sort of starting out as an analyst trainee? And what does that process actually look like for both in this COVID world that we are all experiencing?
Let me check to see if Matt's mic is working.
So can you all hear me now again?
I can.
Hear
Yep.
you.
All right, so
Why don't you
my
take first crack?
earbuds, apparently the battery died. So in terms of, I guess I'll defer to Bill for most of the interview part because he's a supervisor and he's been on the other side, but I can just say to the question of how is the process, it's what we call a structured interview, and it's kind of unique to the federal government. It's probably not like anything that any student will or recent graduate will experience in the private sector. And one of the main reasons for this structured interview is to basically put everybody on a level playing field, to remove all potential bias from the equation. So everybody's asked the same questions in the same order. I've been through probably 5, 6, 7 interviews since starting with the FDIC, including my one right out of college. And they don't necessarily get any easier and they're not any more enjoyable, but I understand them. So having said all of that, I'll let Bill kind of explain a little bit more about the process.
Yeah, and the process itself is the same, whether it's for an internship or for a permanent position. You're going to put your application in through the USA job site. And then after the job announcement period is over, the applications are scored. Again, each time you're filling out a radio button, there's values for each of those radio buttons that you're filling out. So then the top candidates are referred then for an interview. On the permanent job site and for the internship, you're going to select locations. You get to put your preferred duty location. Again, the closest ones to here, we have an office in Rocky Hill. There's another one in Springfield, Massachusetts, one in Foxborough, Massachusetts. We actually have another one in Lexington and Concord, New Hampshire. So that's the New England sites that we have at the FDIC. But if you ranked order those, and if you were one of the top candidates for one of those locations, you would be selected for the structured interview, as Matt said. And the structured interview, just as a way of clarification, is it's unlike private interview because you've already passed the first test. Just by getting the interview, you have the technical skills we're looking for. You have the right background. You have the right credentials, as they say. So then the structured interview is meant to look at the soft skills and find out who's the best fit. So the interview questions are going to be geared around, you're working in teams or initiative or any of the other soft skills. And the key would be to look in the job announcement itself because it lists the key skills and abilities, or KSAs as they're commonly referred to. So if you look at those, you'll see exactly what, some of the soft skills that we're looking for. But fundamentally, we work in teams, so communication is important. Obviously, working with other people, interpersonal initiative is always a big one. So that's what the questions would be geared around. And again, unlike a give and take of a normal interview, we would ask a question, and then the applicant gets to respond to that, and then we move on to the next question. So it's kind of a sterile feeling interview if you've never been through it. So again, there's resources out there for structured interviews that people can check with. but Matt and I are also happy to walk people through that process when they get to that phase. The nice thing is, once the structured interview is over, within a day or two, we respond back to the applicants, letting them know that whether or not they were selected. So it's a fairly quick process once you get to that point.
Fantastic. Wow, Bill, that was actually very insightful. My next question was actually going to dive into the skills that are, that you guys are sort of looking for in candidates, so that, that you would say, hey, these are successful candidates. These are the ones that we're really looking for out of the interview process. But I guess to that note, what sort of differentiates those good interviews versus the interviews that really don't make that lasting impression on you after the interview? Any tips or the tricks of the trade that you sort of would recommend or advise to students that, hey, you really want to hone in or focus in on this or build your skills, whether it's at the university or outside the university, that really sort of shine through, during that interview that makes it memorable?
Yeah, again, for a structured interview, the key piece is going to be able to be explaining the how or the why. So if the question has to do with initiative, the answer isn't, yes, I have great initiative. The answer is, I've demonstrated initiative and here's how. And then walking through, and again, it can be, we wouldn't expect, an undergraduate student coming to the FDIC to have advanced, levels of anything. So we're expecting somebody like, what, during the semester, I was on the intramural, volleyball team, and I was also, volunteering at this nonprofit, and quite honestly, just my school schedule and keeping all that together. And but I volunteered to be to be an officer in the club or whatever. So it's really then showing, so how did you manage it then? So it's the how. You demonstrate it as much as you can demonstrate it. Clearly, if you're getting through UConn with a decent GPA, with all the the rigors of the education program that UConn, clearly you can do that. So now what we're trying to do is see how you do it, how you manage it, and how when you get put into a workforce, how that's going to translate.
Absolutely, Bill. That's great insight as well. So I know we're winding down with my questions here. I do, I wanted to ask as well, as far as the benefits, what are some of the benefits of working, would you guys say, from your experience with FDIC for the period of time that you've been with the organization, that you definitely appreciate you have that with this employer?
Well, there's a reason that I would say the FDIC has been one of the top, if not the top, mid-sized federal agency in the government for the past 5+ years to work for. And one of those is the benefits. It's not to say you can't get paid more salary-wise in the private sector, because the FDIC is limited somewhat by what we can pay, but the salary, I would say, is very competitive for coming right out of college, and it varies based on what office you would be reporting to and working in, to keep it competitive with the area. So for instance, New York City and San Francisco, you would start out at a higher base or salary than you would maybe in some other parts of the country. And also within the first 4 or so years, as you complete the training program, you can expect to receive regular increases in pay. And essentially, if you successfully complete, which we expect everybody to do that, you would see almost a 50%, I believe, 45, 50% increase in pay over those first 4+ years. So salary-wise, like I said, it's a pretty good starting competitive salary, and it definitely is nice that it's non-competitive, and you're basically, as long as you're progressing and meeting certain benchmarks along the way, you're getting nice raises. And then on the benefits side, honestly, I would say it's possibly second to none. I mean, the federal government is known for pretty good benefits already, and then within the FDIC, within the federal government, the FDIC even surpasses most of the, I would say, the regular federal government benefits. For instance, we have 2 401ks where you can effectively get a match of 10% of your salary socked away for retirement. So that's always free money. And when I was in college, honestly, I didn't really understand what that meant. But now that I'm working, I can tell you that I sock away that full 10% every pay period into my retirement, and I'm taking advantage of it. We also have excellent health, dental, vision benefits, a generous leave policy. So, I mean, to me, and admittedly I'm biased, but the FDIC's benefits and salary is pretty tough to beat. I'll see if Bill has anything else.
Yeah, the other thing I would just share is something a lot of companies been trying to do, but we're focused on work-life balance. We have a very flexible, we call it leave at the government, but it's your vacation time. You start with 3 weeks to start with, and you can use it in half-hour increments. So, from the first week you start, you come on, you say, you know what, my brother's coming into town. I want to go pick him up at the airport. Can I take a half an hour off? We have really big flexibility that way. I remember when I started with my first job before I came to the FDIC, I had to put in my 2 weeks of vacation, at the beginning of the year, and then because I was low man on the totem pole, I got 1 week in March and 1 week in November, and there was no flexibility at all. So having flexibility in our vacation time is really tremendous. And then we have different work schedules. Some people work, 4/10s. Other people you can work part-time schedules. So you can really kind of craft it. You can start as early as 6 a.m. You can start as late as 9 a.m. So you can work kind of a schedule that works for you, that works best. So we have, again, a lot of flexibility in how the work gets done. Again, it's a tough job. It's demanding, and you're going to find that you work with some really great people. So again, but the key is it's going to get done. It has to get done well. But how we get it done is there's a lot of flexibility that's been built into the system. So in addition to, as Matt mentioned, the federal government benefits are tremendous. And we even now have a student loan repayment pilot that we're working through. So again, coming out of school with all that debt, while UConn's definitely a public institution, it's still, people come out with debt. There's still an opportunity at the FDIC that we can help pay off some of that debt as you work for the FDIC.
Wow, fantastic, Bill and Matt. Thank you so much for that great insight about all the benefits that that you guys have working with FDIC, and definitely shows that the organization takes care of its people and the people take care of the organization behind that as well. So thank you for that insight. I guess at this point, as we're coming to a close here, I definitely want to open up the floor to either Trisha and or Judy and Shiv, that you guys are on the call. If there's any questions that you guys may have, by all means, please feel free to ask. And I do want to mention too that you may also be in contact with Bill and Matt as well. If we could just maybe add your contact into the chat. Exactly, Matt. Thank you so much. Just into the chat box. If anyone does have questions today, or for those students that are actually at going to review this video at a later time, please feel free to reach out to Matt at Parente, that's PARENTE at FDIC.gov, as well as to Bill Hardy, which is W for William, Hardy, HARDY at FDIC.gov. And you can also find Matt and Bill on LinkedIn as well. If you have additional career questions, by all means, they are definitely available. Or if you have questions for us, please feel free to reach us too at recruit@business.uconn.edu. Our goal is to make sure that you guys are definitely connected and find out about the latest and greatest opportunities with FDIC for internships as well as full-time jobs. So since no one else has any questions at this time, I'd like to just say on behalf of the university, Matt and Bill, from faculty and staff and students, we thank you for your time and your efforts to provide back to our students about great job opportunities that are available with FDIC. And we are absolutely looking forward to having you guys back on campus and partnering with us from a virtual environment to an in-house environment once again. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Our pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. Bye-bye.